Hello and welcome to all our brand new S3 biology pupils. This is Mr. Kinnear. What I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks is creating these video lessons to help you on your journey in S3 biology. What we will do is make sure that we consolidate your learning when you're back in the classroom, but this hopefully gives you the best opportunity to start your understanding of the S3 biology course as simply and as easily as possible. Now, obviously, we're going to start with Unit 1, that is life on Earth. And we're going to start today's lesson with biodiversity and interdependence. So I'll start off every lesson like I probably would do in the classroom and let you know what the plan is. So the plan is to improve your knowledge and understanding of biodiversity and interdependence. And hopefully, at the end of this, you should be able to state the meaning of the words biodiversity and interdependence. You should be able to name the 7 processes that every living organism can do, know what a kingdom is and name all 5 that exist, know what a food chain is, and know what the arrows represent in a food chain. So that is our success criteria for today. And alongside this video, there are some instructions, so things that you need to do. I will put this information on Show My Homework, so you should have seen that already. You'll also see this at the end of the video. So these are the instructions of what you should do. So in your jotter or on a bit of paper, or if you're typing this up electronically, whichever you choose, I expect you to have, at the end of this, meanings of the words biodiversity and interdependence, the 7 things that living organisms can do, the 5 kingdoms of life, and some notes on food chains, including the lion example. And then after that, once you've completed your notes, there's a quick quiz, which is on Microsoft Form. The link I have also put on Show My Homework. So you should have that already. It's very quick. It's a multiple choice one. There's 9 points in it. So you should be able to do that within a couple of minutes flat. But I'll remind you about that later on. So our first bit of information is effectively a reminder, because in S2 you did a topic called biodiversity. So you should know the meaning of that word. Can you remember what it means? Hopefully you're all shouting at the screen. Bio means biology, which is life. Diversity is variety. Therefore, biodiversity means the variety of life. So that's something you will have come across when we did the topic in S2. So that's something you need to write down in your jotter. So I said that bio means life, biodiversity is the meaning of life, but what actually constitutes life? Mrs. Gren constitutes life. What on earth does that mean? There she is in the corner. There are 7 things that all living organisms can do, and Mrs. Gren is an acronym. So every letter of Mrs. Gren relates to one thing that all living organisms can do. So what I'd like you to do is maybe pause the video. Can you think of the 7 things? Now, I'm not asking you to pause it for 20 minutes, just have a quick think about it. And Mrs. Gren, as I said, it's an acronym, might help you if you get stuck. And I'll take you through on the next slide. So every living organism will be able to, hopefully you can shout out as you go through these, move or movement. They have the ability to move. They also respire. So that is the ability to create energy from chemical energy. They are sensitive, so they have senses. You have senses. You're listening to me, you're watching this video, you have senses and are able to adapt to them. They can grow, you can grow, so you are a living thing. They can reproduce. They can excrete, so obviously they get rid of waste products, and they require nutrients. So some of them might be a bit more difficult than others, but those are the 7 things that living organisms can do. Now the crazy thing is, obviously we are in lockdown at the moment because of a virus. Viruses are really a bit strange in that they don't always actually fit into all of these things. So they're not actually termed as a living organism. They can't reproduce without a host, which at the moment is ourselves. They are reproducing within human bodies, which causes some of the problems. They don't respire, they're not necessarily sensitive, and they don't grow. So viruses are really strange. They are one of the things that don't actually fit into all of the terms of a living organism. So on the next slide, what I'm going to do is put a large selection of living organisms. What I'd like you to do, again, if you could pause the video, have a look at those organisms and see if you could put them into groups. There's 5 groups in total. Do you have any idea how you could group those things together into 5 groups? So here are the different organisms. They're labeled A to L, so have a good look at them. You can pause the video here and see what you think, how they could be grouped together, and then I'll take you through the detail. So all of these living organisms can be grouped into 5 major kingdoms, and that's based on the similarities that the organisms or cell types have. Then after that, they're split down based on their differences. So all I'm going to ask you to do is write down the names of the 5 kingdoms. If you want to write any of the extra information that is there, that's up to you. But the basic thing you need to do is write down the 5 names of the kingdoms of life. So hopefully you should have been able to recognize animals. So these 3 pictures, E, D and I, they all contain animals. That includes ourselves. I don't know why the elephant is trying to disguise itself as a tiger, but a tiger and an elephant are both animals, as is the Highland cow. Next up are plants. Again, things you should be familiar with, whether it's a daisy, a large oak tree, tulips. They are all plants. The grass on your lawn, all plants and parts of the plant kingdom. Next up are fungi. They're quite strange. They can be single-celled organisms. One of the most common ones would be yeast, that you should be familiar with from making bread, maybe down in HE. They contain a nucleus, a cell wall, but no chloroplast. They can also be some of the biggest organisms on the planet. Things like you see here, toadstools, mushrooms, etc., they're only a very small part of the fungus that is growing. A lot of the fungus is actually underground, so that's why some of the biggest organisms in the world are actually part of the fungi. Their cell walls are made of chitin, which is slightly different from plant cells. That's why they are separated from plants, in that they have chitin or chitin rather than cellulose in their cell walls. Protists are mainly single-celled organisms. They contain a nucleus. Some can photosynthesize. Photosynthesis is the process of using sunlight to create food. So using light energy, converting it to chemical energy. So as you can see from these diagrams, they all have a big black blob, something you'd be familiar with from first and second year, the nucleus of a cell. So they contain a nucleus, which is different from our friends and actually also enemies in the bacterial kingdom. They are living organisms which do not contain a nucleus, mostly bacteria. So protists contain a nucleus, bacteria do not. Bacteria can be good and bad. Bacteria can make us incredibly ill, but they're also very helpful in a variety of different ways, including in our digestive systems, helping us break down food. So bacteria are both good and bad, but they do not contain a nucleus. So that is the 5 kingdoms of life on Earth. We have animal, plant, fungi, protist and bacteria. So hopefully you should have by now a note of that in your jotters, but also you can go back and return to those slides to write them down. So we're now going to think about the word interdependence. So those organisms we've just talked about in the 5 different kingdoms of life are interdependent. So what can that word mean? Now, if you think about it, you could be classified as a dependent. So that might help you with your understanding of that word. So inter means between. Depend means having to rely on. So as I said, you guys are dependents. You are reliant upon parents, guardians to look after you. So the word interdependence in biodiversity means the reliance on other organisms to survive. So again, that is something that you need to get into your jotters or notebooks today. Interdependence means the reliance on other organisms in order to survive. So to give you an example, in what way do you think a lion relies on other organisms to survive? The simplest one is to obtain its food. So, what does a lion eat? Now, you might have a few different options, but we're going to go with a zebra. There's live action of it. But again, zebra, what does a zebra eat? So a zebra is going to eat grass. And where does the grass get its energy from to pass on to the zebra, to pass on to the lion? So this is an example of a food chain. So as we've discussed, grass passes on energy to the zebra, which passes on energy to the lion. All food chains begin with a green plant because they get their energy from photosynthesis. This produces glucose, its form of food, which then is eaten by the zebra, and the lion eats the zebra. And the arrows in a food chain represent the flow of energy. You could say a zebra eats the grass, so the arrow represents what eats what, but that would be incorrect. We want to talk about the flow of energy. So if you ever asked what does the arrow represent, it represents the flow of energy. So I'd like you to write down this note for food chains. So that is us for today. So like I said right at the start, at the end of this video, I'm telling you what you need to do. It's also on Show My Homework. So the key things today are write down the meaning of the words biodiversity and interdependence, the 7 things that living organisms can do, which is the Mrs. Gren, the 5 kingdoms of life. The names would be fine, but if you want to add any extra detail, you can do. And that note on food chains, including the lion example. The last thing is quick quiz, guaranteed it will take you less than 2 minutes to complete. It's a multiple choice quiz with 8 questions. So hopefully that has helped you understand the terms of biodiversity and interdependence. If you have any problems, drop me a line on Teams and I'll be happy to help you out. But as for this week, that's us. Bye.